Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, I am your host, Money Mike, and this is part 2 of my NFC Draft reaction. I tried to fit it into the first show, but I had to split it up for time purposes. Plus, I'm also going to get into training camp holdouts since we are a couple weeks away from training camp starting. It's quite interesting to me that we see these players hold out each year. Dez Bryant's talking about holding out, sitting out games, even though there was this rumor of a 7-year, $100 million contract. We still have yet to hear anything about Dez and the Cowboys signing a new contract. We're still kind of waiting on that, which means there's a possibility of Dez Bryant still holding out and into the regular season like he says he would do. Then you got Michael Bennett over in Seattle. He just got a contract last year, and now he wants to get paid again. Now remember, he signed a 4-year contract last year, so he has 3 years left on his deal, and yet he already wants a new contract. That's absurd. I don't even know if absurd is going to be the word to describe it, because it's ridiculous is what it is. I don't know. It's interesting to see, especially because Seattle still has to pay Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson wants to play baseball. I don't know. A lot of drama going on in Seattle right now. And I am going to discuss this in depth because, quite frankly, I think something needs to be said. And I think a lot of people out there, all the listeners, you will agree with me when I say it. Feel free right now to click the little bubble on the screen and subscribe to my channel. Subscribe for more of the front 7 for the 2015 season and the all-new Everything Else podcast, in which, if you haven't done so yet, go back and check out my thoughts on E3, Madden 16, the disaster that was Montana 16, and the Everything Else podcast returns this Tuesday as I review WWE Tough Enough 3 weeks in. If you're a wrestling fan out there, make sure you tune in Tuesday. Everything Else podcast discussing WWE's newest reality show, Tough Enough. So I'm going to go through my NFC Draft reaction so I can go in depth on training camp holdouts. If you listen to part 1, we finished off with the Eagles, talking about Chip Kelly and all his moves that he's making, trading LaShawn McCoy, things of that nature. Go back and check it out if you're an Eagles fan. Leave your comments. But if you're a Cardinals fan, Lions fan, Seahawks fan, Cowboys, Panthers, I got your teams covered today. So let's get started with the Arizona Cardinals, who pretty much went from a Super Bowl contender to one of the worst teams in the league, it seemed. Because, as I've said in my podcast when I talked about the quarterback contracts and how expensive they are getting, and how the NFL owners are making all these rules that pretty much make the quarterback a make or break position on your team. I said it then, and I'm saying it now again. The Cardinals, with a healthy Carson Palmer, is a Super Bowl contender. But without, their season is done. We saw that in the playoffs last year when the Panthers beat the Arizona Cardinals in what might have been one of the worst playoff games in recent history. Maybe all of history, I don't know. But it was just terrible. And basically, Carolina was given a free pass because if Arizona had a healthy Carson Palmer didn't get injured, Arizona might have been a good threat to have made the Super Bowl last year. What do they do to ensure that doesn't happen again this year? First off, let's go back to last year. They are trying to fix that offensive line. They see Carson Palmer, he's aging, they need to protect him. So, Last year, they signed Jared Veldheer from the Oakland Raiders to solidify the left tackle position. This year, they went out and got Mike Iupati, a free agent from division rival San Francisco 49ers, to secure the left guard spot. So now the left side of the line is set. And I love it a lot because they got to keep Palmer healthy. I think they saw what happened and they don't want it to happen again. So what do? DJ Humphries, offensive tackle out of Florida, was their first round pick in this year's draft. And it is pretty much slated that he probably is going to be sitting at right tackle this year. As well, it was right tackle Bobby Massey that allowed the sack that injured Carson Palmer to happen. So I can see why they took Humphries. Solid pick. Like I said in part 1, teams are trying to do what Dallas has done over 3 years. You know, the Rams just took Isaiah Battle in the supplemental draft. So, I mean, that's even despite the fact that they added a bunch of linemen in the draft. But they went back and still added an offensive tackle, Isaiah Battle, who everybody expected to be the only guy taken in the supplemental draft this year. Now, for Arizona, it's going to be a little bit different on the defensive line this year. Darnell Dockett, he's been a staple on that defensive line. Cardinals, they cut their ties with him, trying to save some money. Moving on. Dockett's not going to get any younger, so they're cutting their ties now. Very smart move, I think. Now, I do like the additions of Sean Weatherspoon, Lamar Woodley, and as I said, Mike Iupati. They solidify the left side of the line. And also, adding in Lamar Woodley, Sean Weatherspoon, it kind of gives stability to their linebacking core. We don't know what's going to happen with Darrell Washington. He's had his off-field issues. So they've needed to bring in Sean Weatherspoon to secure it. And then you look at Lamar Woodley, who was cut from the Steelers last year, and then signed with the Raiders, and then he was cut this year and signed with the Cardinals. And Woodley was playing defensive end for the Raiders. Now he's going to go back to his more natural 3-4 position, 3-4 outside linebacker spot. And I think, James Harrison, we saw he was retired last year, and the Steelers brought him back, and he notched like 5 sacks or something. And for Lamar Woodley, I think he can be a huge impact for the Cardinals in the pass rush department. They added Marcus Golden in the second round. They need help on pass rush for quite a while. Getting a young guy like Marcus Golden and a veteran like Lamar Woodley is going to be huge for that defense. Now, looking at the rest of their draft after that, they got David Johnson out of Northern Iowa in round 3. Very solid pick. They need a complement to Andre Ellington. They got that in David Johnson. Plus, with the improvements to the offensive line, it should open up more holes. That can give Carson Palmer a little bit of leeway in hitting the ball off more and taking pressure off of him, thus allowing to kill the clock more and control the game. I was really surprised that they did not take Max Williams, the tight end from Minnesota, because Arizona has desperately needed a Rob Gronkowski, Jimmy Graham tight end. They needed a playmaker at that position. And I think for Max Williams, as I said in my AFC draft reaction, I think he's going to be huge for the Ravens this year. And I think if Arizona would have took him, I think that would have been a huge difference. It would have took a lot of pressure off of Fitzgerald, a lot of pressure off of Michael Floyd, and it would have opened things up more in the offense. New Lions defensive tackle Elodie Nada said that he's never played in defense like Detroit. Now, granted, Detroit plays a 4-3. So, he's been in a 3-4 defense playing playing a 5 technique for the Ravens his whole career. He's now transitioning to defensive tackle to help replace Ndamukong Suh and Nick Fairley. And I start that off with that because, well, it is going to be interesting to see how the Lions do without Ndamukong Suh, who is now in Miami. Now, a lot of people thought maybe they go first round, like Malcolm Brown, maybe a Jordan Phillips, somebody that could replace Ndamukong Suh and Nick Fairley. They waited until round 4 to get Gabe Wright out of Auburn, which makes sense because, like I said, they traded for Haloti Ngata, adding some young talent there. Nick Fairley went and took a 1-year deal with the Rams, which I'm very surprised that the Lions didn't try to match it. And overall, I think the Lions as a whole improved in this draft a lot. They traded down with the Broncos, in which the Broncos panicked and assumed the Ravens were going to take Shane Ray, so they traded up to get ahead of them, in which case the Ravens never wanted Shane Ray to begin with, because Brashad Perriman, as confirmed by John Harbaugh himself, Perriman was higher up on the board. He was ranked 14th on their board, sitting there 26th. And that if he wasn't there, they were going to trade out. So after trading down with the Broncos, Detroit now is picking at 28. They cut Rob Sims, and a guard that I thought that I figured would had a shot at sneaking in at the end of the first round, and I was right. Laken Tomlinson, the offensive guard from Duke, in the same deal with the Broncos. They also got Manny Ramirez, who as of now is penciled in at left guard. Tomlinson should be able to get the starting spot from Ramirez in training camp and solidify their offensive line. That's going to be huge for Detroit. Now, Reggie Bush, gone. Now they need another running back. They bring in Amir Abdullah out of Nebraska, in which case all reports say that he is doing well in the mini camps and that he might be taking on a big role this season, in which, that's a fantasy alert, because Amir Abdullah might end up being a sleeper pick in the fantasy drafts this year. Round 3, Alex Carter, cornerback out of Stanford. I like the pick. Detroit, for quite a while, they've struggled to find cornerbacks. I don't know why, but they haven't had a real Patrick Peterson, Darrell Revis, Richard Sherman shut down cornerback. Hopefully, or at least they hope, Alex Carter can be that guy and be a steal in round 3. They again added Texas cornerback Quandre Diggs. Might be some depth, might be a special teams guy. Round 7, they took South Carolina offensive tackle Corey Robinson. The thing here is interesting is that they got Adrian Waddle right now penciled in as the right tackle, and Corey Robinson is right tackle only. I don't really see his measurables or anything like that says, hey, he can be a left tackle. So while they went ahead and replaced Rob Sims at left guard with Laken Tomlinson, it's interesting to note that they drafted Robinson, because while I believe he is right tackle only, maybe that's where they want to put him at. Who knows? Because right now, Adrian Waddle, right now, their starting right tackle, he's at 585 for this year against the cap. He's a restricted free agent 2016. So maybe the plan is for Corey Robinson to sit for 2 years, learn the offensive line scheme before replacing Waddle long term. And remember, Waddle had knee surgery last year, so maybe they're looking ahead. And with him being restricted free agent next year, it gives them at least another year to see maybe if he can be the guy long term, or maybe Robinson can be that guy to replace him. From Detroit to Carolina is our next trip. on this NFC Draft reaction, part 2. The Panthers draft was, well, it was quite interesting to me because you look at their needs heading into the draft. The one need that stuck out, not just to me, but also to everybody who has 20/20 vision, their offensive line needed work. And I mean badly. They needed to get Cam Newton protected. Every other team gone out and drafted offensive linemen. In terms of Arizona, they signed free agents to fill the void, try to improve it. Carolina, meanwhile, are like, well, let's go cheap and bring in Michael Orr, Jonathan Martin, and yeah. I feel sorry for you, Cam Newton. As of now, this is the Panthers' starting offensive line. Michael Orr, left tackle. Andrew Norwell, left guard. Ryan Khalil at center, long term. Now, he's been probably the only stable thing on the Panthers' offensive line. Try Turner, rookie last year, solid. He's going to be a long-term guy. Right tackle, Mike Remmers. Now, they did draft Darrell Williams, and maybe Darrell Williams can take the job at right tackle, or at least hopefully for Cam Newton's sake. I don't know. It's tough to win 3 straight division titles, and the NFC South was so bad, and this year I think the NFC South is much improved. I think it's going to take 9, 10 wins, maybe 11, if somebody gets lucky and gets a win that they're not supposed to get, and things of that nature. But it's going to take 9, 10, 11 wins to win the NFC South this year. And for Carolina, their defense pretty much stayed the same. They did bring in veteran cornerback Alan Ball, who I think is going to be a great addition to it because their cornerback situation is kind of shaky. And the head scratcher pick for the Carolina Panthers to me was Devin Funchess. Nobody knew what his position was. It was like he was fantastic at tight end in Michigan, fantastic player, looked like he had all pro skills at tight end to be a Gronkowski, Jimmy Graham type of difference maker. Then Michigan decides to switch him to wide receiver, and then he's not so good. So teams, when they were scouting him, didn't really know where to go with him. Carolina decided to trade a bunch of picks for Funchess and trade up in the second round. Now, the Panthers general manager said that he was worried that Funchess was going to be gone. Considering the fact that Jalen Strong would have been there at their original second round pick and was even there in the third round, tells me that their general manager panicked. And he could have stayed where he was and gotten Jalen Strong, who I think is going to be the better receiver. But if they plan on moving Funchess to tight end, this pick might actually work out for them. But if their goal is to put him as a receiver, I'm not too sure it's going to work out. Dallas, they won the NFC East last year, and this might be the draft that turns everything around for the Cowboys and puts them back into being a solid, consistent playoff contender. We know Tony Romo is not going nowhere. If the deal is correct, with a $100 million 7-year deal for Dez Bryant, then they'll be set long-term on offense with Dez Bryant, Tony Romo. But, as we've seen, their defense has been the issue. We all remember the 2013 game against Denver, in which a game that they should have won, but that was the year they had the worst defense in the league. So, this year, what do? There's a lot of talk of Brandon Flowers. He might be cut. They're still trying to get him to take a pay cut. So they go out and put some pressure on him. They say, you know what? Alright, we'll draft Byron Jones, cornerback out of Connecticut. 6'1". Again, just like I said, everybody's trying to do what Dallas has done with their offensive line. Everybody's trying to do what Seattle's doing with their secondary by taking these 6'1", 6'2" corners that can match up with the receivers the same size. And I personally thought Byron Jones would have went a lot higher than this. I looked at Detroit as a possibility. I looked at Pittsburgh, definitely, because they don't have like Taylor, and their secondary is kind of in shambles. Troy Polamalu's gone. So, Byron Jones, I thought maybe Pittsburgh, Detroit. I even thought Arizona, Antonio Cromartie. He went back to New York with Revis. Then I thought maybe Carolina might be a dark horse. Then I thought, okay, maybe the Ravens. But the Ravens took Perriman, and as I said, Perriman was their top guy. Where do I begin with Randy Gregory? All leading up to the draft. I, and just like everybody else, had him in the top 5 of all my mock drafts. Then all the off-the-field issues came. And he plummeted to the 2nd round. Now, considering top 5 talent, you think maybe somebody would take a chance at the end of round 1. Nobody did. And I think a lot of teams are being more skeptical of players with off-the-field issues after the hell that was the 2014 season with Peterson, Greg Hardy, Ray Rice. They're trying to be a lot more cautious. But Dallas says no. Dallas says, you know what? You've stayed on the board long enough. You're coming off the board pick 60. But here's the thing. Everybody's talking about La'el Collins. Another guy who slipped completely out of the draft after allegations hit the day of the draft. And he even tried to get moved to the supplemental draft, but the NFL denied that. So, when you look at this draft for Dallas, they just got even better as a defense with the additions of Byron Jones and Randy Gregory. Their offensive line is going to continue to be set heading into the future because La'el Collins should be able to beat out Ronald Leary for the left guard spot, but unless there's no open competition, then La'el Collins is going to sit for a year. And while Ronald Leary, he's 26, but that's a spot that can be upgraded on. Left guard, La'el Collins should easily be able to slide into left guard in the future. And as for Doug Free, he's 31 years old. They just signed him to a new contract back in March. It's only a 3-year deal, but they did take Florida offensive tackle Chaz Green, who could be the future there at right tackle when Doug Free's contract is up in a couple years. Overall, I think Dallas, if you include undrafted free agents, they just got 3 first-round picks. 3 players who all have first-round talents in this one draft. Byron Jones, Randy Gregory, La'el Collins. Like I said, don't be surprised if this draft right here changes the history for the Dallas Cowboys. And we may be able to see them being a solid, consistent playoff contender, and just maybe if the Seahawks and the Packers just don't show up to play, they might be able to be Super Bowl contenders. And if Carson Palmer gets injured. Speaking of Seattle, because this is going to be perfect to segue into my player holdouts. Because, as I spoke at the top of the show, Michael Bennett, he wants a new contract despite the fact he signed one last year. Russell Wilson, he wants to play baseball. He wants to be a 2-sport athlete. I don't think the Seahawks are going to go for that. I do think a deal gets done, but something's going to have to give in terms of Russell Wilson not playing baseball. Looking at what Seattle did this year, they're coming off of 2 straight Super Bowl appearances, in which they should be coming off of back-to-back Super Bowl championships, but Pete Carroll decided to just have lunch do nothing on the final play of the game. In which I think it sparked the big trade of the offseason when they sent their first round pick to the New Orleans Saints for Jimmy Graham. Because I don't think they make that move, that touchdown, if that interception does not happen, if they just ran the ball a Lynch, or maybe it was a touchdown instead of an interception, that it would have resulted in Jimmy Graham not being traded to Seattle. Graham might have actually been traded elsewhere maybe, or maybe he would not have been traded. Who knows? In which the Jimmy Graham deal, they sent center Max Unger to New Orleans as well. They lost Malcolm Smith to the Raiders. Byron Maxwell signed a huge overpaid deal with the Eagles. They did make headway this year when they said they were not picking up Bruce Irvin's option year on his rookie contract. Then that sparked some kind of thing where Bruce Irvin was like, yeah, I want to go play for Atlanta. And then Bruce Irvin backtracked and all this other stuff. And no matter what happens, whether Irvin resigns or whatever, they at least have somebody there in Frank Clark out of Michigan. That was quite an interesting pick because of the domestic violence charges, in which he was clear of, but at the time of the draft, quite sketchy when you look at the Ray Rice and Greg Hardy, Ray McDonald incidents of last year. They then decided to trade up to get Tyler Lockett, and they traded a bunch of picks. I don't get it. This is kind of one of those questionable picks again, like I had with Devin Funchess. With Jalen Strong available, I don't understand it at all of why it happened and why they decided to trade up for him. But I think Lockett, they're looking at more of a return role for him because Percy Harvin is not there and they need that spark on special teams and they want to try to replace what Percy Harvin gave to them. The question for Seattle would have to be, does Michael Bennett hold out long enough, just like Des Bryant for the Cowboys? Does Bennett end up missing games? Or, does he get a new contract? Or will Seattle not cave in and let him sit out? Are they going to pay Russell Wilson? How much is he going to get? We saw how much Cam Newton got. Moving on along, because I want to get through that really quickly as possible, because I try to keep these shows about 40 minutes, because I don't want to do a very long show and then you guys tune out quickly and, stop listening, because I want you to listen to the whole show. So I try to keep these about 40 minutes. Player holdouts, to me, I've always found quite interesting, because these guys are millionaire athletes. Teams throw out millions of dollars, and, let me see if I can do it how the primetime players do this. Teams just go ahead and throw out millions of dollars. And yet, for some particular reason, it's not enough for these players. These are millionaires that are pretty much like, hey, I want to be more of a millionaire. You made me one, but I don't feel like a millionaire, so pay me more millions of dollars, right? And it's so ridiculous. And I mean really, really ridiculous, because they pretty much have all the control in the world. And yes, granted, I know in the NFL, and I've seen this said, and I've seen players speak of this, where loyalty is like a one-way street, and teams aren't loyal. They can always cut you, things of that nature. And while it is true, usually it's because you've underperformed after taking big money from the team, and your cap hit gets higher, and then you basically become not worth paying that amount, and thus, rookie scale, we can have a cheaper alternative, which makes things funnier to me, because the whole point of the rookie scale was to ensure that veterans were getting the money, and that the rookies weren't getting these big contracts before they really actually earned it. But yeah, all this rookie scale has done is pretty much gave teams a easier way out with veterans who are overpaid, aging and things of that nature. Because they go, hey, guess what? We can get a cheaper alternative in the draft. And so, that's why I think from that standpoint, I can see why the players hold out. But at the same time, they're already millionaires. And granted, yes, a lot of players go broke after they retire. Well, that shouldn't be our concern as fans. And you shouldn't be sitting there like, oh, I'm broke. It's like, dude, you made millions of dollars. You signed a contract for X millions of dollars. Where's all that money? And it's always because these players are mismanaging their money, thus why they're broke after they retire. And for me, I see, and I think a lot of you listeners out there will understand what I mean by this when I say it. It is an insult to every NFL fan pays their hard-earned money, take a trip to Chicago. Recently, all the years they went to New York with the draft. Travel to New York, travel to Chicago, pay their hard-earned money for hotels, tickets to these events, to go to the draft. I know the draft is free because you got to get a wristband. But the fans sit there and they save up their hard-earned money to get hotels, to get season tickets, to buy individual tickets, in which, good luck with that, because Ticketmaster is a complete ripoff. And then they go and they travel. You see fans from not just the home team, but from the visiting team. So these fans go out and they spend their hard-earned money, not just on tickets to see their team, but they also go and spend money to see their team play elsewhere. So that's hotel room, that's driving, that's flying, all this money they're spending, all their hard-earned money, especially in this economy. And you say, and you have these millionaire athletes, I'm not paid enough, and I want more millions of dollars. Yet they seem to forget what shape this economy is in, and they should be realizing how thankful they should be that they're playing in the NFL and they're talented enough to earn millions of dollars and don't have to worry about things that NFL fans like me and yourself have to worry about. Many people out there may think, oh, and you're comparing apple to oranges. No. See, in this economy, a lot of people are struggling. The unemployment rate is up. People are struggling to find jobs. All the while, you have these millionaire athletes whining and complaining. Oh, because so-and-so is making more millions of dollars than I am. Or making more money. And it's like those people that wait, like I said, it's like those people that wait to play the lottery because they want to be higher. So, they just sit back, they wait, and it's almost like holding out, basically. Like holding out from the lottery. Like, yeah, I'm not going to play until you're up to 300 million jackpot. And the players are basically like, hey, I ain't going to show up for work until you pay me this many more millions of dollars. It would be quite funny to see like some kind of like social experiment to see how a boss in the real world would react to an employee coming in. I want to pay a raise, and I want this amount of money, but this guy's getting this much, so I want that much. Then pretty much go, hey, I'm not showing up until you pay me that amount, and walk out and not come back. You know what would happen? If me or anybody else did that in the real world, we'd be fired. We wouldn't be coming back. But yet these players can sit there and go, I'm going to hold out. I'm not going to show up at training camp. Basically, they're not even showing up to work. And in the real world, we don't show up for work. We get fired. They get to keep their little millionaire cushiony job. They can hold out. I mean, yeah, they get fined, but please. They make millions of dollars. What's a $200,000 fine going to do to their bank account? Like, Nothing. Michael Bennett was talking about, I'll stay in Hawaii till Seattle decides to pay me. And, okay. They drafted Frank Clark. I mean, they got guys on the team that can replace you, dude. NFL players are replaceable. Every NFL player is replaceable. And yes, look, even the all-time greats. Because eventually, the all-time greats retire. So you have to replace them at some point. So every NFL player is replaceable. So you can hold out all you want, Michael Bennett, Dez Bryant. You can hold out, sit out games. Cool, whatever. Whatever makes you feel more entitled. But know this. This is how I'm going to end this show. Because I want you guys to comment below. I want your opinion on this. Because I guarantee you a lot of people listening right now are going to agree with it. To every single NFL player. If you're thinking about holding out this year, Michael Bennett, Dez Bryant, whomever else, don't. It's not going to get you anywhere. You're already making millions of dollars. So, stop complaining. Show up to training camp. Put in the work to be ready for week 1 of this regular season. Don't just not show up. Because there's a lot of conditioning that goes into prepping for week 1. That's why we have the preseason. That's why we have training camp, or we have practices. So that these players can be conditioned and ready for game day. Holding out does nothing for that. So, go ahead, hold out, set out games. The team's going to replace you. Team's going to put somebody else in your place. And if you're lucky, that player is bad and not as good as you and forces a team to pay you what you want. But if that player who replaces you, well, you're sitting at home somewhere because you didn't get an extra $1 million or $2 million, he ends up better than and he pretty much either better than you or gives the same production, well, then the team has the advantage at that point. Just think about that for a second. We fans have bills to pay and student loans, whatever, any type of bill it can be. And while we are paying the bills, we as fans sit there and set aside X amount of money and say, I want to put this amount of money towards the tickets, towards hotel, flight, towards gas money if you drive, things of that nature, okay? We're putting like maybe $400 or $500, it's like $600, maybe $1,000, I don't know. Depending on how much you want to spend. And that's money that we're putting towards the NFL to go see you play. And that's money that we don't really have to spend on the NFL. That's money that we can sit there and go, that's $500, $400, $600, $1,000, whatever. That can go, that at some point we could have gone and said, you know what, that money could have gone towards a bill. It could have helped pay the bill off. But instead, because we love the NFL, because we're so passionate about our teams, that we want to see them live and we want to go to the stadiums and feel the stadium atmosphere. We put aside that money in order to do so. I went to WrestleMania 30 in New Orleans at the Superdome where the Saints play. I put aside, I think it was like $500 and then whatever money extra I spent while I was in New Orleans to go and see that event. Take in what it's like to be at WrestleMania, to feel, what it's like. You see it on TV, you see it on the, on the WWE Network now. I think it's still on pay-per-view, I believe, but you see WrestleMania, and you want to be there live in person, because you want to feel the emotion, you want to feel the atmosphere. Just like when you're watching an NFL game, you sit there and you hear the crowd, you hear them chant, defense, defense. You hear how passionate, how loud they are on third down, and you sit there at home, and if you've never been to a game before, and you go, wow, I wish I was there. I wish I was a part of that. And if you've been to NFL games. You want to go back and have that same feeling. You want to go back to that atmosphere. So you set aside money each year so you can go and feel that atmosphere every year, whatever stadium you go to. And that's money that we essentially don't have to put towards NFL tickets, towards going to that game. That's money that we can put towards bills, maybe down payment for maybe something else. We could buy something else or whatever. You get my point. Yes, this is offensive to fans like me and all you listeners out there. Very offensive that these millionaire players think that, oh, it's not enough. 40 million, 45 million guaranteed, 50 million guaranteed is not enough for them. They need to go and get 60 million guaranteed. And as I said in my quarterback contracts podcast, the quarterback contracts are going to get higher, and I imagine at every position the contracts are going to be inflated, and we're going to see more and more of these contracts getting higher and higher, richer and richer, and yet these players will still complain because they don't have enough millions or because somebody else is making 1 million more. I think everybody would love to have the same problem NFL players have. I mean, if my only issue with money was that, I have 55 million, but my only issue is that I don't have 65 million, I think we would all love to be in that situation now, wouldn't we? We would love to have all that money and be able to go into our jobs and be like, hey, we want more money, we want a pay raise, and be able to actually get it by doing nothing like these NFL players do when they hold out and they just sit at home and do nothing. And it's amazing. You read things online, you look at Yahoo, AOL. Every day there's some kind of freaking quote-unquote problem that somehow is offensive to somebody, because every day in this country somebody is offended by something, even by the littlest thing, just because we're trying to be politically correct. Yet, the one thing that is most offensive and should be most offensive to everybody is these millionaire players that just forgot what it's like to be in the real world. They forgot what it's like to be on an hourly paycheck, and you're sitting there and you're wondering how many hours you're going to get each week, because you may not have a set schedule. You're wondering, when is going to be the next pay raise? Am I going to have enough to pay a bill this month? And everybody out there, every NFL fan not just NFL fans, but every person in the United States and all around the world would love to sit there and take that problem of worrying about if they're going to be able to pay a bill, how many hours are they going to work, all of that stuff, and they would trade it in a heartbeat to have the one problem that NFL players have, and that's, I have 55 million, but I'm going to whine and complain because I don't have 60 million, and I'm not more of a millionaire. We would all trade for that lifestyle. Everybody would. And, they do all these things that, they say if you win the lottery, you shouldn't do. I mean, duh. That's why you're freaking broke when you retire, because you mismanage your money. If we had this problem, if anybody out there had this, any normal person had this problem, yeah, in the self-entitled world that we live in, yeah, we will sit there and go, well, yeah, I'm a millionaire, I'm going to go out and buy all this stuff. But at the same time, we would probably manage our money better than NFL players. And that is where I am going to say goodbye as we close another edition of the Front 7 podcast. Make sure you subscribe to the channel for more of the Front 7 podcast for the 2015 season. And wrestling fans, tune in this coming Tuesday for my review of WWE Tough Enough. And I can tell you this, if you are a real wrestling fan, I think you and I are going to share the same view, and you will agree with me a lot. But hey, if you disagree with me, that's what the comments are for. If you disagree on anything I said on this show, maybe I did compare apple to oranges, maybe it wasn't a good comparison, but maybe you have a different perspective, different view, leave it below in the comments. I'll read it, I'll comment back, I'll even discuss it with you in the comments. And make sure, if you missed the AFC Draft reaction, go back and listen to that in case you missed the AFC teams draft recap. Go back and listen to part 1, where I discussed Chip Kelly and his crazy moves, how Jim Tomsula is on a fair in San Francisco replacing Jim Harbaugh, Jameis Winston, and how he can impact the Buccaneers. I am your host, Money Mike. Thank you for listening. I'll see y'all Tuesday for the Everything Else podcast.